Hi everyone, it's Shea. Welcome to or back to my channel. Today I have a language learning video for you all, and I think it's going to be a really helpful one and one that I've wanted to talk about for a long time. So in today's video, I will be sharing 6 tips of how I improved my accent and pronunciation in Italian, and all of these tips can be applied to any language that you're learning. Just remember that you probably always will have some sort of accent in any foreign language that you're learning, and that's totally okay. It's normal. It takes a lot of practice to be able to get it perfect, so don't feel pressure to feel like you have to have the perfect accent, but you can practice to get really close. Pronunciation isn't something that improves overnight, definitely not. It takes a lot of practice, so hopefully these tips can help you if you're self-conscious with your accent or your pronunciation of certain words. Tip number 1 is a little bit more on the technical side of things, and this is just looking at the IPA, or the International Phonetic Alphabet, of the language that you're learning so you can understand how sounds are different. And I don't know about you, but I find linguistics very interesting, so this step actually is very fascinating to me. First thing I did when I started learning Italian, or when I kind of looked at learning French, I loved to watch videos on YouTube of someone explaining the different sounds. If you're learning a language that has very small differences in similar sounding letters, for example, Hungarian, there's like 4 different ways to say the vowels, which I remember hearing, and I was like, I don't know if I can really hear the difference, but there is a difference. And if you're learning that language and you want to be able to speak it, obviously you should also know that difference. So definitely watch a video. Don't just read an explanation of it. Watching a video on YouTube will be really helpful so you can try to train your ear and hear the differences between the different sounds. The International Phonetic Alphabet includes all of the vowel and consonant sounds that you will hear within a language. And I'll include a link below in the description so you can check out the whole chart. If you haven't seen it before, it looks really daunting and scary. You don't have to fully understand it, but there's an interactive chart where you can hover over different symbols and sounds and hear how they sound. So once you hear these different sounds and you can pick out the sounds that are different from your language, or the sounds that simply just don't show up in your language at all, you are going to want to focus on those. You're going to want to practice those by mimicking those sounds. And obviously, this is how a child learns a language. They're mimicking sounds that they hear before they even realize what they're actually saying. Mimicking involves observation and stretching your mouth and your tongue until you get that sound exactly right, which is why we grow up being able to speak the languages that we are surrounded by and having trouble with other languages that we aren't used to, because our mouths and our tongue placement just might not be used to the sounds of other languages, whereas someone who grew up mimicking those sounds and forming those find it way easier to make those sounds. And also, if you grow up in a bilingual household, or maybe you speak 3-4 different languages, usually those kids grow up without an accent in all those different languages because they're already used to making those sounds. So that's also interesting as well. I have a friend who grew up bilingual, speaking English and Spanish in her home, and she doesn't speak Spanish like with an American accent. She doesn't speak English with a Spanish accent. So it's unfortunate if you weren't able to grow up in a bilingual home. I wish that I was, so I wouldn't have an accent in like Spanish or Italian. And I'm gonna read an interesting quote from a book called The Phenomenon of Non-Native Speech, and it says, "Second language users face a difficult task. They must learn to perceive fine phonemic differences and establish a new system of phonological rules, produce sounds and sound sequences that often contradict the rules of their native languages, and replicate the patterns of stress, rhythm, and intonation that carry implicit as well as explicit meaning. Even if some advanced learners perform like natives for various aspects of L2 grammar, phonological authenticity is out of reach for most." Basically, you're at a disadvantage if you didn't grow up learning the language, but there's always ways that you can retrain yourself to be able to make those sounds. It's not impossible, it will be difficult, but you can definitely do it with practice. As I said, once you've kind of looked through all of this, just practice mimicking the sounds in videos that you watch. There's a lot of videos that just focus specifically on the different sounds. If you have to roll your R's and you aren't able to do that, there's videos that help you practice that. Just keep mimicking the sounds along with the videos until you feel more comfortable that you'll be able to use those in words or in full sentences, and then you can really dive back into the language. And tip number 2, once you've taken a look at the different sounds of the language you're learning, is to actually practice those in context. So what I like to do is read aloud as I'm reading a story in Italian. I started off with reading children's stories, and now I'm reading a full novel in Italian, so you can do that as well. There are some links that I will put down below of the children's stories that I was reading. They were really good because they also had an audio that you could follow along with, so that way you can match the audio to get things like intonation and just like the pacing of sentences and how to speak. I always like to read with my computer open or my phone next to me, so that way I can look up the pronunciation of a word because I don't want to be repeatedly pronouncing it wrong. So if I'm a little bit unsure, I will look up the pronunciation. Luckily for me, Italian is pretty cut and dry when it comes to how to pronounce it because they follow the same types of patterns, but I'm sure for other languages, or if you're learning English especially, it's sometimes the way we spell our words doesn't sound like the way you would say them. So definitely have some way you can reference and make sure that you're actually pronouncing things correctly. I used to read just in my head, and I thought, okay, I'm getting better at being able to speak, but once those words actually come out of your mouth, it's very different. In your head you think, oh, I can pronounce this, but trying to say them out loud, they might come out very wrong or just a lot different than what you expected. So that's why it's another way to just train your mouth to be speaking new words. It also definitely helped me with the speed at which I can speak, because then I'm not tripping over words if they are harder to pronounce. This is just because I'm getting used to the different sounds of the language and also how to connect certain words or how that sounds when you are speaking faster. But definitely don't try to rush that, it will come naturally. And then my next tip is shadowing movies or TV shows. I do have a video of all the shows and movies that I've watched in Italian on Netflix, so be sure to check that out if you need recommendations. While you're watching shows or movies or maybe interviews or YouTube videos, that's really great for helping with comprehension and learning new words, but you can definitely take that a step further and start mimicking or shadowing what the people are saying in the videos. So maybe you're hearing a word or phrase that you hear a lot and you know what it means now. You can pause the video and mimic it in the same exact way, listen to it a few times, or maybe you could find an interview that's a few minutes long and just start repeating the interview questions or the answers, and that way you can practice matching the exact tone and intonation and the pacing of a native speaker. Because pronunciation isn't just getting the words to sound right, it's also about the intonation and the speed or the little intricate pieces of how people speak a language. Sometimes what I like to do is if you get a phrase down or you want to practice speaking an interview, you could record yourself and listen to it throughout the day, have a reference to practice. Tip number 4 is to sing along with songs. So this is a really fun one, and I've been doing this since the very first day I started learning Italian. I started listening to songs. I have a playlist in Italian that I will link down below. Learning songs is fun, but it also really does help with pronunciation. When you're learning song lyrics, you hear a more relaxed and natural way of speaking the language instead of, reading something from a textbook or hearing some sort of audiobook or just like really formal ways of speaking. What I first did when I was trying to actually learn the lyrics, I would pull up the lyrics, listen to the song, and try to say them aloud as the song went on. And then, as I'm driving, I would listen to them in the car. And my playlist was just maybe 4 or 5 songs at the beginning, so that way I could just repeat those songs over and over again. And now I've been adding more once I found artists and bands that I've liked. It's also really good because it can help you memorize words in context. So it can help you learn new vocabulary, and it's easier to memorize a song versus just like trying to memorize an interview script or a story that you're reading, because the melody of it is fun, and I have some songs that just get stuck in my head all the time. They're fun to just like dance to. And I've noticed that as I sing along to the songs, it has really helped my pronunciation because I'm mimicking the way that they're singing it. If I were to just read the lyrics out loud and try to say it, I would pronounce it much differently than when I actually hear the song. If you don't have a lot of time to study, this is a good way to study but not really realize that you're studying, because you could listen to music in the car or as you're cleaning or something. So this is a fun, easy way to kind of sneak in pronunciation practice. Tip number 5 is practicing by sending audio messages on Tandem. And I've talked about the app Tandem a lot on this channel. It is basically just an app where you can connect with native speakers. It isn't sponsored or anything, but I personally just find that it's really great. It's free and you can talk with so many different people. So there's also an audio message feature. So usually when I connect with someone, I ask if they don't mind if I send audio messages, because instead of just typing out messages, obviously you want to learn to speak and pronounce things correctly. So it's great because you could send an audio message and then they can respond back with the correct pronunciation, or just kind of correct what you've said and tell you the mistakes that you've made. And it could be good because you could find a language partner or study buddy, and who knows, you could start having calls in the future, and then you really could get like real-time practice having an actual conversation with the native speakers. And then my last tip is kind of just like an overall thing to keep in mind as you're practicing: slow down and over-articulate. When we first start learning a language, I'm sure we all want to be able to speak super fast, natural speed right away, and you definitely can't rush that. I tried to, and you will stumble over your words. As you're reading, for intonation purposes, you can really just over-exaggerate the sounds because you want to be able to train your mouth and your tongue to be able to say these certain sounds. And in some languages, I feel like there is a subtle difference, and some you really have to over-exaggerate and really put in the effort to make those different sounds. So as I mentioned earlier, for Italian, it might seem like a lot more energetic than just like monotone tones of English. So, you know, you can over exaggerate as you're learning and then kind of tone it down as you get the pronunciation correct, but just have fun with it. I mean, usually I'm studying alone in my room, so you don't really have to worry about anyone hearing you. It may seem silly at first, but I promise it will be very helpful later on and will help you just accelerate your progress. I hope this video helped you get some ideas on how to practice improving your pronunciation and accent. As always, getting as much exposure to the language as you can through watching shows, practicing speaking, writing, listening is amazing, and all those things will really help you. Language learning, obviously, it takes time and it's really a commitment, so as long as you stick with it and practice as much as you can, you will definitely notice improvement, and I wish you the best of luck. So thanks again so much for watching. If you found this helpful, definitely make sure to like and subscribe to my channel for more language learning content. I will see you all again very soon. Bye!